Hello indie game fans, if you have not checked out Darkest Dungeon 2, I would highly recommend that you do so if you just like good games. So in a similar vein, we are looking at promising upcoming Rogue-lite RPGs, combining the classic turn-based combat with meta progression and randomness, which can be excellent if done right. Let's begin with Timewreck Tales, one that, honestly, isn't the most impressive visually, having rather simple looking pixel art characters, but does give me a vibe similar to that of You Must Build a Boat, and looks to be a pretty decent entry in the space. It's a high fantasy title where you play as contractors for Chrono Inc., a company that has the technology to enable time travel through the use of time crystals, allowing you to change the timeline and to explore the multiverse. While simple looking visually, the systems do appear to be pretty deep, from combat, team building, perks, loot, skill checks and so much more, making it of interest to me. A little bit of a surprise, since Malice Greed released in early access in March this year, but was a game that I missed, being an entry in the space that adds a monster taming element. You can get bosses and enemies to fight on your side, but can also sell them and steal their skills through a vendor, looking to be mechanically interesting, but I'm not the biggest fan of the user interface, which does look pretty cluttered. For all roguelite titles, I do appreciate it when developers at least try to give some reason as to why you can die and retry over and over again. So think more along the lines of Zagreus and being immortal in Hades, or the Goop in Dead Cells escaping out of the armor to live another day, where time travel then conveniently becomes one of the most commonly used reasons for this, with Beat the Clock being the example here. The story starts off at the end of the world, where an abyssal monster has grown so powerful that the destruction of humanity is inevitable, but luckily, we have the power of a chronomancer on our side, and a team of 4 heroes can go back in time to attempt to destroy the creature when it was still vulnerable. There are 20 playable characters, which means plenty of variety, with nice minimalist designs that makes this look pretty slick. A cute looking pixel art entry is Hearts of the Dungeon List, one that has a visual novel dating sim element in addition to the turn-based combat. I do like the UI and interface, which reminds me of classic Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, with mini-games included as well, where it's releasing in December and should be worth a look. One of the great parts of the Steam Next Festival is that I get the opportunity to discover a bunch of great new indie games and to share them with you, and even while I was a little tied up in terms of time, these games tend to find their way into videos down the road, as is the case with Trinity Archetype. As can be seen, this does appear to be quite a classic by-the-numbers roguelite RPG, down to having a Slay the Spire style looking map as you travel from node to node, but where it looks interesting is the character design. Rather than a rotating cast of various heroes, it appears you are limited to using 3, the so-called Holy Trinity of games in Tank, DPS and Mage, with different builds in each run as you try to defeat your enemies. The rune upgrade system for skills and abilities does look interesting as well, so I cannot wait to give this a try. One of the long in development games in the space that I've had my eye on is Ragtag Crew, one that is set in the post-apocalypse, described as Firefly meets Douglas Adam, as your band of scavengers travels through the desert. There are 8 playable character classes, each having one of 7 different personalities, which affects all aspects of the game. From the animation, it certainly looks to be taking cues from Darkest Dungeon with the zoom-ins, but does have its own art style which is pretty good. As such, it's a pretty decent looking game that has been actively marketing and getting the word out, so I thought I'll help them along. I did come across Crush the Industry when looking for upcoming roguelite deck builders, which you can watch linked above, but despite deck builder being in the description of this game, I could not find any such elements in the trailer and screenshots, so here it is instead. You play as an employee in a game development studio, having to fight your way to the top, as you encounter everything from toxic players, internet trolls, jealous employees, and meetings, using attacks like creative fire and brainstorming in order to get ahead. As seen, this has a map with various nodes as you move from battles to vendors to random events, all with a very meta theme which simply looks awesome. I do love the battle interface as well, since it reminds me quite a bit of Earthbound, so it gets a great spot on the list. Rave Asylum is a title that looks fantastic, clearly having some Darkest Dungeon inspiration but with a cyberpunk theme. I do think that the hand-drawn art is great, especially when zooming in on enemies and characters during their attacks, but it does have its own distinct art style as well.
Fight.
Combat here is positional, where there appears to be 9 spots on the battlefield, which will lead to plenty of strategizing over positioning and abilities. You're trying to prevent the city from descending into madness due to an interdimensional rift that caused eldritch abominations to spew forth, so I guess it's kind of comforting to know that even in the dystopian cyberpunk future, some things just never change.
Fight.
There was once a time when goblins were plentiful in these woods. These few, the last of the green goblins, are all that remain.
A standout, upcoming title is Goblin Stone, one with fantastic art and strategic combat to match, adding a city building element and has previewed very well in demos.
The road ahead will not be easy. Perhaps their journey will be worth following.
A beautiful pixel art title is Sandwalkers, where the developers have made an excellent narrated trailer, so I'll be back in a bit.
The trees. From the sun they gave shade. From the wind they gave shelter. They filtered the water, kept the soil from washing away. They gave us life, but between 2 trees. Now the trees are so far from each other. I am Vavzez, teller of the 13th caravan of the Macaw, the only one still living. As it was for the 12 before us, our mission was to plant a new tree, to serve as a city for climatic refugees. We joined the many who failed in their task. May our experience serve you well, for it is now you, the 14th caravan, who are tasked with continuing the work of the Macaw. Escort your botanist to the ends of the world Create a new haven that the caravan that follows you may go even further and continue our quest for knowledge that will one day allow the 15th, the 16th, the 100th to repair the ancient folly that made this world hostile to life.
Being the next title from the developers of Legend of Keepers, this really is a no-brainer, but I want to see what's new here, taking the #1 spot. For more indie RPGs, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.